You're listening to another episode of the Ranger Gareth podcast, where we discuss nature news and interview the finest minds in the ecosphere. I'm Gareth Villanueva, former park ranger and permanent conservationist. Today, my guest is Ethan Courtbeek, an expert in freshwater sailing. We're going to discuss a couple things about Wabamun Lake, the history, the ecology, and what it's like to sail in one of the driest provinces in Canada. I would also like to emphasize that this podcast is separate from my current job. It is, however, my passion to spread awareness about environmental news and events to the general public. I would also like to thank our sponsors, if they existed. If anybody out there has a bit of extra cash, please throw it my way. I want to retire. Hello, everybody. We're back. I'm Gareth, and this is my guest, Ethan, friend, co-worker, and local sailor. Now, who'd have expected somebody would be sailing in the middle of Alberta, a province which is well known for being not the best for fishing when you have 4 million people and something like 600 fishable lakes and rivers. Ethan has somehow found one of the only decent lakes and decided to start sailing on it. For anyone that's from Edmonton, we're all well aware of Wabamun Lake. When you look at Edmonton on a map, there are only a couple lakes nearby that people tend to fish. You've got Wabamun, you've got Lac St. Anne, you've got Pigeon Lake, Sylvan.
Chestermere, down in Calgary.
Some people would make the drive all the way down to Chestermere. Otherwise, you have to go way the heck north into the Boreal or way east to Cold Lake. But around Edmonton, you're pretty much limited to, Sylvan, Pigeon, Gull, Wabamun, Lac St. Anne.
Yeah.
Wabamun is a pretty popular lake just due to the fact that it's only about 45 minutes outside of Edmonton, so everybody is willing to make that short drive out there. It usually freezes up pretty good in the winter. This winter, I was able to get out there in mid-December and actually start fishing on the east end because it froze pretty quickly, even if maybe I shouldn't have gone out that early because I went with a very large man, and the ice was cracking a little bit, but we still made it work. But yeah, it's one of the best known and most studied lakes in Alberta. It's about 60 kilometers west of the city on Highway 16, and there is the summer village of Capassoin. I believe there is the First Nations reservation right there as well. And I'm actually going to be using the Atlas of Alberta Lakes as one of my big sources for this episode, as well as the Wikipedia page for Wabamun, because this lake has a lot of history. First off, fun fact, Wabamun is a Cree word meaning mirror, which I didn't know until I started doing my research for this episode. And when you look at Wabamun, Alberta's been populated for a couple hundred years now. In the Wabamun area, the first main industries were mining and power plants. So there was the Wabamun power plant on the North Shore, which Ethan has confirmed was decommissioned and demolished a while back, early 2000s.
I remember it was up and running when I was a kid, and I don't want to date myself, but that was at least 20 years ago.
A while back.
So, yeah. And now, there's not a lot of activity there on that North Shore, but you can still see some on the south side.
Yeah, and then you got, Sundance Power Plant is still on the south side. Yeah. And then there's the Keep Hills Generating Station, which is just a bit away from Wabamun. But technically, the Keep Hills cooling pond is still within the Wabamun Lake drainage area. Wabamun Lake is well vegetated. The water's fairly clear. It has rare blue-green algae blooms. Again, this book is a little more dated. I don't know if we had any bad blooms after the big oil spill, but we're going to get into the oil spill. The Atlas of Alberta Lakes predates a lot of the ecological disasters which have come as a result of our rapidly expanding industry. This is not an anti-industry podcast. It's just there are some negative side effects which are hard to avoid, especially when you're a rail company, which is more focused on profits and shareholder value than track maintenance.
But even if you look at like Pigeon or Alberta Beach, right? They have every year. It's like clockwork. Blue-green algae.
Yeah.
Whereas Wabamun, not so much. You might have the odd flare-up at parts of the lake, but it's not the whole lake that's overrun.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about where we sail is that, it's usually we can get away pretty well with not having to worry about the blue-green algae.
Now, as someone that, I guess your family has a lot at the edge of Wabamun,
Yeah, so our sailing club was established in 1960, and the way it's designed right now is that it's a giant waterfront property, and then for members, there are trailer stall access, so people can put their name forth to apply for a trailer spot. The nice thing is that for what it costs, trying to get lakefront property anywhere near Edmonton, this is the steal of the deal.
Yeah. Do you know if Wabamun has stricter rules for like sewage maintenance, use of fertilizers on lawns? Could that be part of the reason? Are you aware of any restrictions on use of like gardening chemicals?
I feel like I heard that there was some restrictions after the CN rail spill that people were not supposed to use any just because they were still trying to deal with all of the issues that the spill had caused. So as far as I know, we don't use any at the club. As far as our neighbors around, I'm not too sure.
Now, for anyone who's wondering, yes, we are going to go into the CN oil spill. It is a central part of this episode because it is a central part of the history of that lake. Wabamun's also very popular for sport fishing, so I've personally caught pike, walleye, and perch there. My buddy, when we were fishing for perch, actually caught a giant whitefish on a tiny little perch lure. Apparently there are burbot there as well. There are 2 or 3 sailing clubs at the lake. There's also windsurfing, which is popular because I guess Wabamun is quite good for its wind.
It's either windy or like a mirror. It's very aptly named because it's either windy or flat.
That is perfect. The drainage basin is 3 times the size of the lake. There's a lot of agriculture and mining in the immediate area. I know strip mining was a big thing around the area for a while. I don't know if strip mining is still happening all around Wabamun.
It's the one that they used to have on the north side of the lake has now moved. I'm not sure where they moved, but that mine is closed. But that was pretty prevalent. It was kind of cool to see when you were a kid as you're ripping from one end to the other on the highway. You could see these big trucks and you could see the whole strip mine on the north side of the highway. But it's gone now. Crazy. And now there's a KFC and Burger King.
Oh man. The lake is 19.2 kilometers long, 6.6 kilometers wide, so quite long and narrow.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes for good wind. Yeah, you can start on one end of the lake and just get blown all the way to the other side. Lots of upland game birds, waterfowl, and big game also use the area, so the whole area around Wabamun is good for hunting. I actually hunted my first pheasants not too far from there, down by like Genesee.
Okay.
So not super far from Wabamun. Now, the provincial park is in the northeast corner of the lake in a place called Moonlight Bay. Fun fact, almost every winter somebody drives their vehicle through the ice at the train tracks that go into Moonlight Bay because there's a current there and the water never quite freezes.
I could see that. Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't seen it this winter yet on the ice fishing pages. Maybe I missed it, but almost every winter somebody does it.
As long as you're not driving your vehicle through the ice, then it's okay.
Man, I was not taking my truck onto the ice this winter.
No.
It was too weird. Like the freeze thaw cycle was too weird. There are a lot of ecological issues at Wabamun. So there are heavy metals such as aluminum, chromium, arsenic, and copper that were dissolved in the water from all the coal burning from the old power plants early in the lake's history. The heavy metals that were dissolved in the water were deemed to be at acceptable levels, but the metals in the sediment and the mercury that was found in the large pipe were found to be excessive. So that is still an issue which is plaguing us to this day.
Yeah.
And then we come to the big oil spill. Now, Ethan and I were both alive for this. It wasn't, I guess it was kind of long ago, 18 years now.
Yeah.
At 5:40 a.m. on August 3rd, 2005, 43 cars of Canadian National Freight Train derailed near the Whitewood Sands subdivision, spilling up to 1.3 million liters of heavy bunker C fuel oil. I am not exactly familiar with what heavy bunker C fuel oil is. I know it's a hydrocarbon, and I know it is not good. It is estimated that 734,000 liters of the thick, dark material were spread by high winds across 8 kilometers of the surface of the lake. Soon, volunteers began placing booms and absorbent material to protect the shoreline and brought in 230 oil-slicked birds and other wildlife to the Wabamun area for rescue. 100 Wabamun Lake residents took part in the 5-hour blockade of the CN tracks in protest against what they felt was insufficient action by the railway in cleaning up the spill. The province of Alberta then issued an environmental protection order to ensure the cleanup proceeded. Sidebar, yes, protests do work sometimes, especially when you have the moral high ground.
Yeah.
If they pollute your lake, which has been in your family's heritage for, 50, 100, in case of the First Nations, thousands of years, yeah, protest. Get your money, get that bag, get your stuff cleaned up.
They did not want to clean it up. I remember, because I was probably, that was 2005, so I would have been 19.
Yeah.
And I wasn't frequently using the lake as much as I did when I was a younger kid. But yeah, I remember it was like a battle. It was a battle with CN, like they don't want to do it, and it was just...
Try and blame someone else.
Yeah. I don't know. Somebody's putting too many pennies on the track trying to get those flat coins. I guess. I don't know.
The fact that they tried to convince us that was such a dangerous thing as a kid, and as an adult you realize, no, they just don't do track maintenance a lot of the time to save money. I'm like, I was so fooled.
Oh, I remember as a kid, going out throwing pennies, quarters on the track. Sometimes you put the odd rock just to see what would happen.
Yeah, it would just spark and shoot everywhere.
And then it's no problem.
Yeah.
You get your nice little coin, and now it's more so you got to worry about them crushing your kids, but that's okay. Hey, we live in the city. Yeah. We got the LRT. LRT's crushing trains, crushing people.
Note, there is a podcast you should listen to called "Well, There's Your Problem," and it's all about different engineering disasters, and so many of them involve trains. Because so often what happens is well, we're getting very sidetracked, but the companies are focused on growing shareholder value. There's this whole new thing called precision scheduled railroading, where the whole thing is just all train cars that are sitting still are wasting money. We need to find the most efficient way to always have all of our train cars rolling all the time, delivering goods or people 24/7. So on a good note, more efficient railroading. On a bad note, more underslept contractors and poor trail maintenance. And rail lines aren't getting shut down when they should, etc.
Yeah.
Back to the horrific oil spill. 4 days after the derailment, CN said that a, finger quotes, hazardous chemical had spilled into the lake in addition to the bunker C fuel oil. Residents were told to stop cleaning wildlife and completely avoid all lake water and well water, even for watering gardens and lawns. The 88,000 liters of pole treating oil that had escaped from a ruptured derailed tank car contained naphthalene and other polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons listed as highly toxic and suspected of being carcinogens. Now, I am not a chem major. I am not 100% sure what polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are. Sounds bad.
Sounds awful.
sounds very bad. Further outrage and condemnation came against CN for not informing the community earlier of the hazard before many people were avoidably exposed. The provincial government weighed demands that it institute criminal charges against CN officers for the delay. CN released a statement on October 18th that estimated the railroad's financial obligation cleanup from the spill cost an estimated $28 million, with remaining costs covered by insurance. We'll skip a little bit of this. CN eventually pleaded guilty to 3 charges related to the oil spill and paid $1.4 million in fines. Again, not that much.
No.
Not that much. As of 2016, the lake has returned to its near pre-oil spill condition. Water quality is good, and Alberta Health has lifted its ban on eating fish. However, Alberta Environment and Parks still maintains a zero-catch limit on most species of fish. And there were a couple other issues, but that was honestly the big one. Alberta has had a couple big oil spills. I think there's a website which probably tracks all of them. I know the Alberta government For better or for worse, despite what some people say, they have been pretty good at being forthcoming with certain information. Like the other day, I found a list of all the dams and reservoirs in Alberta because I was just looking for it. That's on the Alberta government website if you want to find all the dams and reservoirs.
That's cool.
So there must be a list somewhere of like all the major oil spills.
I'm sure buried like 5 clicks deep, you know? Based on being Alberta, like God love it, but
you know what? Actually, let's do this on air. A list of Alberta oil spills. Let's see if it would be. Oh, okay, and my computer is being difficult. Okay, list of Alberta oil spills.
being as we're coming into that season, I wonder if they have a list of all the forest fires too.
Oh God!
Year over year.
Let's see. This might be all oil spills. Yes, that one's all oil spills. CBC has a list of 5 major oil spills in recent history. Leaks adding to pipeline versus rail safety debate. That's another fun one. So I think I read that statistically, and again, this is, please don't quote me or sue me, CN, or whoever else is listening, but I think I read that rail cars are more likely to derail and spill, but pipelines are more likely to have larger spills. So the pipelines don't leak as often, but when they do, it's generally worse.
Yes, that's my understanding. What I also think, though, is that if you look at the rail spills versus the pipeline spills, I feel like the rail spills typically happen in more populated areas or around more like Lac Mégantic, right? That was a huge one in Quebec. Very, very, like, people died. Like, that was a bad one.
Horrific.
And then you got this one in Wabamun where it's it's infecting the people in the town. It's affecting all of the small little communities around the lake. It's affecting the wildlife on the lake, right? Versus the pipeline stuff. I don't know enough about it to say 100%, but it just, the ones that I remember on rail seem to be much more drastic.
Memorable.
In nature. Yeah.
And then you've got, of course, the mobile oil, like the deep sea oil drilling platforms.
Yeah, BP. I remember that. It was a big one back.
Oh, they got away. They got away with that.
We're sorry.
It's okay. We'll change our name from British Petroleum to BP. Please forgive us.
Yeah.
Excuse me. What? Okay, so for 5 recent pipeline spills, April 2011, 4.5 million liters of crude oil leaked near the First Nations community of Little Buffalo in northwestern Alberta. The largest spill in 35 years. It only contaminated 3 hectares of beaver ponds. That's kind of surprising, actually. 4.5 million liters of crude oil, only 3 hectares.
Because the beavers had the natural dam set up.
I mean,
hey, I don't know.
Yay? Maybe it all soaked into the muskeg and just didn't spread. So that was bad. Alberta's premier at the time, Ed Stelmach, also criticized the oil company's poor communication with the First Nation, as well as with the province itself following the spill. You know, Ed Stelmach win. Rare Ed Stelmach win. Gotta give it to him sometimes.
Yeah.
Red Deer River spill. Oh, that's not good. Plains Midstream. Oh, is that the same company as the first one? Yep. Okay, so Plains Midstream was the Little Buffalo spill. Plains Midstream was also the Red Deer River spill. This time, 500,000 liters of sour crude oil leaked into a creek that flowed into the Red Deer River. The 461,000 liter spill prompted further strong criticism from Alberta's energy watchdog. The regulator concluded Plains Midstream didn't inspect its pipeline often enough and didn't pay attention to government warnings. They were fined $1.3 million. Then you've got Enbridge with the Elk Point spill. A pumping station northeast of Edmonton spilled 230,000 liters of oil in June 2012. I mean, I guess luckily the spill was almost completely contained to the site near Elk Point, Alberta, with no impact on wildlife or water, said Enbridge. So take it with a grain of salt. It was the 3rd major pipeline oil spill within a 1-month time span in Alberta after the spills at Red Deer River and Rainbow Lake. You had the Slave Lake spill, where CNRL, Canadian Natural Resources Limited, caused 70,000 liters of oil and processed water to spill into Slave Lake. How was that not considered an emergency? Okay. Well, it was not considered an emergency according to the Alberta Energy Regulator. It didn't leak near any people, water, or wildlife. And then just a few months later, CNRL again had a spill into the muskeg near Red Earth Creek. About 60,000 liters of crude oil leaked out, but a regulator said wildlife was not affected. And there were also low amounts of hydrogen sulfide gas. H2S can and will kill you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That is incredibly dangerous.
Regulator doesn't have his H2S Alive ticket.
No.
Okay.
As a guy who doesn't work the trades, I know that shit's bad.
Oh, yeah.
All right. The process for H2S to become sulfuric acid. How does that happen again? Is it just exposure to water? Is it? I don't know. I should get a chemist on this show. I need a fact checker.
That's not bad.
I need to hire one of my professor friends to just fact check while I'm just spouting nonsense.
You know, that's okay. It's interesting to see the top 5 things that they highlighted, right? We're all oil. We're all pipeline spills versus the rail spills. But from what I remember, right? And it's all such a short period of time. That was like a 2-year span.
Yeah.
Those are the 5 big ones a decade ago. And now look, credit to the oil industry. As an Albertan, I think you see a lot more advancement where you just don't hear about it as much, but the way that things are going, you should hear about it more.
It is hard to hide things nowadays.
Yeah.
Like, what is it? Tech mining down in Sparwood, BC. Like, they keep getting in shit because of the amount of selenium leaching into that creek down there. I'm forgetting the name of the creek or river right now. But I think it's their elk something mine. But whatever's happening in Sparwood, BC, selenium keeps leaching into that water. And in fact, the Americans, because whatever the creek is, it flows down into Montana, I believe it is. And the Americans are like, hey, you guys are now affecting our water quality. Knock it off, or this is going to be going to like international court.
Oh.
So yeah, things are getting spicy. Don't get involved in international legal disputes if you can avoid it.
I can't afford it.
No. I'm still trying to buy a house. But now we are going to get on to one of the big reasons I brought you onto the show.
Sailing in Alberta.
Sailing in Alberta. Hello, national athlete Ethan Courtbeak, representative of the Wobman Sailing Club and the protector of your lineage.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm super excited. I'll give you a little bit of a rundown. Yeah, I grew up at Wobman Sailing Club when I was a kid. My parents, my dad was also a member there when he was a kid. The club was started in 1960. My grandpa came from Holland. My opa immigrated in the mid-60s. Had my dad and my uncles here in Edmonton, and grew up sailing in Holland, and then was looking for somewhere to go. So he ended up finding this little sailing club out at Wobman Lake. And my dad was raised there in the summers. He brought us along. Now that I've got kids, I've got my kids learning how to sail. And it's such a weird sport, honestly, in Alberta, because we are landlocked, right? Yeah. We're covered on all sides. And it's not like Ontario or Saskatchewan or, Minnesota, and then there's lakes everywhere, right? Yeah. Like you mentioned off the top, that we've got around Edmonton, we got Pigeon, Wabamun, Sylvan. There's not a ton. No. Right? And a lot of people, especially being that we have the oil field industry, right? It's a lot of power sports on the water. Tubing, water skiing, wakeboarding. Going out for a rip, eh, bud? Yeah. Which I love doing anyways. Going out to sea, just having a time out on the sailboat. There's just something magical about you and the wind. And when you're not paying attention, that boom comes across, smucks you out of the boat, and that's always a good time. Is it?
How many people are involved in this Wapman Sailing Club? How many active sailors do you personally know?
Yeah, so I think as far as the membership goes, it fluctuates a little bit year after year. There's different membership levels as part of the club. I think active members, we have just under 100 active members.
That's pretty good.
Last year, we actually partnered with the Navy cadets. So we do, they rent out some space and they keep their boats there. They do a lot of their training there. Mm-hmm. The nice thing is that there's an Alberta Sailing Association and the Canadian Sailing Association. So we get some of the funding from them, some of the funding from the province as well. And so there are regattas throughout the province. Being that we're one of the bigger clubs, we often host some of the major sailing events in the province. They have provincial regattas. We have usually something going on every weekend from after May long weekend up until Thanksgiving is our last regatta of the season. It's called the Rum Barrel. It's all for good fun. There's a big potluck after the race. So yeah, there's always something going on, usually on the weekends from May long weekend till Thanksgiving. So
when we were speaking before this episode, I could only list like 5 sailing clubs off the top of my head. There was Wabamun, Chip Lake, Glenmore Reservoir, I think Gull, and then Ghost Reservoir outside of Calgary.
And then there's one out in Chestermere.
Well, now that you pointed me in the direction of the Alberta Sailing Association, there are so many more than I expected. Cold Lake, Calgary Yacht Club, Disabled Sailing Association of Alberta, Edmonton Yacht Club. Where would they meet? I don't even know where they...
So Seba Edmonton Beach. Yacht Club is out of Seba. So they're just on the other side of where we are, because we're on the northwest shore, and they're kind of on the northeast, or the east side. We're on the northeast. They're on the west side.
Oh, even one from the Northwest Territories is part of the Alberta Sailing Association. So Great Slave Lake, Great Safe Sailing Club.
Okay.
There are, quite a few. Lake Newell, that would make sense, I guess. St. Mary's, that'll be down at the reservoir, which I think I showed you the pictures is almost empty now. Did I show you the reservoirs? And that
one's ours, yeah.
Wapman Sailing Club.
So it's a lot of like dinghy racing. So usually 1 or 2 person boats. And then we have, the monohulls, just like your standard sailboat, and then your catamarans with the dual pontoons. So it's pretty awesome. We have a sail week in July. Usually it's the 3rd week of July. And a lot of the time there's activities. That's probably the busiest time of the year for us in regards to like putting on lessons. There's Alberta Sailing Association coaches that are certified that they taught me. The cool thing was some of our coaches were actually trying out for the Canadian Olympic national team. So you had very, very high end coaching as a kid, which was, and it's geared towards kids. So they try to make it as fun as possible. And then the rest of the time as an adult, there's lessons going on periodically throughout the week. So you can either sign up as an adult to take the lessons, or you can just do there's also private lessons available. So
is your sailboat a monohull or a catamaran?
So we've got a couple, and they're all monohulls.
Are they family boats or are they club boats?
No, so they do rent sailboats at the sailing club. You have to be sponsored by a member. So obviously, if you were interested to come out, I could set you up, and then we'd go fill out a rental agreement. Essentially, it's free for you, and then we could sail together. I could show you how everything works, and then if you want to go putz around by yourself, absolutely you can do that. But yeah, we own a couple different boats. There's different classes as well. So the bigger the boat, generally the faster it'll sail, depending on the skill of the sailor, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And then as far as the regattas and the racing stuff that we do, it's similar to golf in that there's handicap points. So, the bigger boat is expected to finish faster than the smaller boat, right? So everyone starts roughly the same time. Once the horn goes, everyone crosses the line, and then they just keep track of where you finish and what your start time is versus your end time. And then there's everything's done on computer, thankfully, because it wasn't back in the day. There was a big book. You had to look at all the handicap times and figure out, okay, this guy finished at this time. Yeah. This is his class, and then figure out actually where they rank in in the race. So yeah, now it's all done on computer, thankfully. So usually the nice thing in the club is everyone gets a turn to practice scoring, practice running the races, setting the course. So yeah, it's all volunteer based, but yeah, so we've got a couple monohull boats. We have a small one for my kids. It's called an Opti. It literally looks like a bathtub in the sense, like it's a square boat and you're like, this shouldn't float.
Yeah.
But it does. So that's what I learned on. That's what my kids have learned on. And then we've got a small a laser, which is internationally. They have them all over the world. They actually have international races. One of the guys.
Sorry, the laser is the type of boat?
The laser is the type of boat, okay. Yeah. So it's just a single person boat, pretty small. One of the guys that we sail with and actually play hockey with, he was just down in Puerto Vallarta. He was doing some laser training. So they have training all over the world. You can pay and go kind of anywhere, and it's one of those internationally recognized boats. And then we have what's called a Fireball. So our boat is a 2-person boat, medium size, kind of built for medium type winds, not too heavy, not too light. But yeah, so my wife and I are gonna make that an adventure this year.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you got your wife into sailing, right?
I did, yeah. So when I grew up, after high school, I kind of got out of it a little bit just based on, going to school and working and different activities. And then once my kids were born, that's when I really got interested in, hey, this was I remember it being a blast when I was a kid. Just something to do, Wabamun, like you mentioned, is 45 minutes away from the city. From my house in South Edmonton to the sailing club, 45 minutes door to door. Perfect. So it's great. Worst case, you forget something in town, just rip back and pick it up. So that was the big draw, was that it's kind of a legacy. My grandpa was there, my dad was there, my uncles. Some of the joke, we have a big family, so some of the joke is that it's like the Court Peak Sailing Club a little bit to an extent.
That's good though. It's nice to have that, like, I don't even know, like, it's not necessarily like heritage, but like just to have that group memory of one location, something to bind the whole family together. Yeah. Like, hey, we're the Court Peaks and we sail. That's what we do. Like,
yeah. And it's one of those things that if you know a Court Peak, we're related. We're there, there's not many of us. All of the ones in Alberta, we're all related. So
if I ever meet another one, the first thing I'm doing is, do you know Ethan?
That's a good option. Yeah.
So since you've been hanging out around Wabamun pretty much your whole life, has it been growing and developing a lot? Like, has the town expanded? Are there more amenities there now than when there were as a kid, or has it stayed kind of the same?
It's been a little bit the same. There's a Home Hardware there. There's a grocery store, a couple convenience stores. The school's gone through a massive renovation just recently. But it's a lot of the town that I remember as a kid. So you'd come, our sailing club's about 3 kilometers from the town itself. Yeah. And I remember, as a kid, walking up and down the tracks when they're clear on the way to go, your parents are busy sailing and you're out there, we're going to go get some ice cream. So you can just ride your bike or walk to town, not have to worry about a whole lot. It's a nice little small quiet town. You're off the main highway. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of just on your own. And the ice cream store that was there when I was a kid, still there. Probably some of the best ice cream that I've ever had. Nice. They got tons of flavors. Shout out to Yellow Submarine in Wabamun.
I still haven't been. People have told me, but like, I usually go to Wabamun in the winter when it's closed.
Yeah. They do good pizza there too. So honestly, it's not a huge place. You did mention fishing. One of the cool things is that as my kids got older, to get them some fishing experience, the Alberta Fishing, I don't know if it's the council or whatnot, but I would get emails every once in a while. So they would actually put on, Alberta Conservation would put on like an intro to fish class. So so we did a couple years where they did intro to ice fishing. So they supplied tents, they supplied all of the gear, the lures, the rods, everything. Mm-hmm. And then they had conservation officers there, which was awesome because then they talking to you about fishing and getting a license and everything.
Yeah.
So they do a couple different events like that every year, which is a great experience to get into, right? Because again, it's so close to the city, and a lot of people, just to get up and running is when it comes to fishing, it can be a little bit expensive, right? Once you get the fish.
Be daunting for people that don't know what they're doing. Like,
oh yeah,
I think it's really good to get people. I think it's really good to introduce people to fish and wildlife officers and conservation officers when they're young and just starting their outdoors journey.
Yeah.
Because first off, there are not nearly enough of them to cover the whole province. There are, I don't even know the numbers anymore, but probably less than 100 fish and wildlife officers and less than 100 conservation officers to cover a province of 4 million people.
Yeah.
Not enough. And then plus the national park wardens. But it's not enough to, make sure people aren't poaching, to make sure people aren't doing thing X and thing Y wrong. I've caught myself every once in a while where I would make like a little mistake and I'd be like, oh, I can't do that because I have a conscience, but like not everybody would do that, especially if they've never interacted with the people whose job it is to stop you from doing that.
Yeah. Or if you grew up, in a small town and you don't, you grew up hunting, for example, but you may not have taken the hunter's ed course, or you may not have the experience of running into conservation officers, right? You might do things that were taught to you that may or may not be I don't want to say illegal, but the not the proper way of doing things, right?
Maybe unethical.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't break any laws, but you probably shouldn't have done. Oh no, that one's definitely illegal.
That one's horribly illegal.
That one's definitely illegal.
But I know guys that were like, "Oh, I didn't know you can do that." Well, you grew up in a different part of the province, like no big deal. Like, oh.
Yeah.
But there's not enough exposure to that, so I thought that was a cool thing that they partnered with Fish and Wildlife to do. And yeah, that's got my kids super jacked up about fishing. Very excited. Because we went in beforehand. My son wanted to learn about fishing, so we went to Cabela's. And, unless you flag somebody down, they just have their fishing gear supplies. And it's like, well, what do I really need?
Yeah.
At the end of the day? It's been a long time since I fished. I don't know.
There's so many different types of things as well. Like
mismatch of supplies. And
do I want a spinning reel? Do I want a bait caster? Do I need like a heavy rod or a light rod? Or what the heck is a fly rod?
Yeah, you're buying flies for a casting rod, and all of a sudden, nothing's working for you.
Why am I not catching anything? Why can I not cast this thing?
Yeah. So no, that was a cool thing that they did. I honestly, in the years that I've been there, I've never been to the provincial park. Believe it or not.
I can believe it. There's not it gets so insanely busy during the summer. I've been there a couple times, and every time I was just like, too many people. Like that boat launch, which is right there, packed. And people get grumpy if you're like,
oh, yeah.
if you're new to boating and it's your first time backing up a trailer to a boat launch, don't pick there. Do not pick Wabamun Lake. It's drive your boat 5 hours outside of Edmonton to a lake where there are 3 people.
Or go to Wizard on a weekday.
Is that one pretty empty?
Wizard, yeah. It's a smaller lake, right? But it's right just south of Edmonton.
Okay.
Again, it can be like that on a weekend. But yeah, Wizard, if you're backing up your boat to drop it in the water, not a bad option. There is, not too far from our sailing club, there is a public boat launch, but it's never busy, and so I don't want to give anyone any tips to exactly. We want to keep that the sweet spot now. So
send them all to the provincial park. Oh, sorry, it's closed for maintenance.
Yeah.
Go to where all the angry people are.
Oh, and there's no toilets by ours either. There definitely are some porta potties, but we want to keep them. Keep them at the public area. So.
Yeah, it's crazy. So. You said Wabamun kind of varies from super windy to very, very calm.
Mm-hmm.
On the days that, if you went out for a day of sailing and it was super calm like that, would you just call it a day, or would you still try and get on the water?
Yeah, so there's some days where it looks pretty good. Like a decent amount of wind, you're looking typically between 7 to 12 knots is like a good amount of wind where you can run all of your sails, right? You can do your downwind sail. It's called a spinnaker. And that's a good amount of wind. Sometimes it'll be above that. And usually, like for me, that's too much wind. We just don't have the weight to keep the boat stable, to keep it flat, to maximize it. So typically, we've broken our boat sailing in high winds before. We've had some some major repairs that have needed to be done just based on the strength of the wind. That 7 to 12 knots, that's kind of the primo spot where you can get cruising.
And what is that in kilometers an hour again?
It's a little bit more than 1-to-1, I think.
Let's see. Knots to kmh.
Similar to miles per hour.
All right, one knot is 1.5 or 1.8
1.8,
kilometers.
yeah. So about
7 knots would be about 13 kilometers an hour. So about like a gentle bike ride.
It's a good, and it doesn't seem like that fast, but then once the wind's going and then you start sailing, it can get going pretty good.
Yeah. And then 12 knots would be like, a bit over 22 kilometers an hour. So that'll be like a good bike ride.
Yeah. And then, typically like that's sort of the wind strength we're looking for. When it's slow, when it's below that 5 knots, you're kind of sunglasses on, sunscreen, just
gently drifting down the lake.
Yeah, casual drift is what it is. So it depends on the weather, right? If it's nice weather and middle of July, 20, 28 degrees out, that's okay. That's nice. It's good to spend a couple hours on the water. You're not going anywhere fast, but there's no rush. Yeah. Right? There's no hurry.
Throw a lure off the back of the boat, slowly troll the lake.
Yeah.
See if I can finally catch one of those big monster pike people keep telling me are in Wabamun.
I hear they're there.
Somebody posted a picture the other day, and I was just like, how is that there? I don't even see them when I have my camera in the water. And I've been looking.
I've never brought my rod on the boat. Last year I did a race where it was light winds, so I took my daughter on the small boat on the laser.
Oh, and as soon as I checked the ice fishing page.
Oh, there's a car right through the dirt.
Yeah, I was like, this one isn't Wabamun. This is Lesser Slave Narrows. A truck went under. Oh my God.
As a truck note, like in December, I went to Sylvan for a Christmas party, and I was shocked because it was smooth as glass, but the amount of trucks that were out there, I could not believe. I was shocked that they were still on top and not underneath.
Weirdly enough, now that my truck is paid off, I am more scared of losing it. When I was still paying for the truck, I would drive onto the lake. I'm like, now that it's completely paid off, I'm like, I don't want to spend another $50,000.
Yeah.
This was apparently a Wabamun Lake pike right here.
Holy.
That thing's got to be over 40 inches.
Yeah, that's a big 20-pound pike for sure.
That's a big mama right there.
Wow.
And this guy was saying he got it, like 3 days ago. Which is, it's shocking, but again, like, it's not the first time I've seen a giant pike like this come out of that lake.
No, and it's amazing how he got it up that hole.
Man, they are... Like, I've heard people have issues with some of those big pike. And when I got my electric auger, I got the 8-inch auger, and people were like, you should get a 10-inch. And I was like, I'm not going to catch a fish like that. And then I see people pull those up, and I'm like, maybe I should have gotten the 10-inch.
Just trade it in.
Yeah. God, it's an expensive hobby, but probably not as expensive as sailing. Do you have to spend a lot of money for sailing?
It depends on the boat, right? So the boat that I would sail, the bigger boat, the Fireball, ours is a wooden hull. It wasn't. So when we bought it, we set it all up, took it out. It was out at the lake. I was out there with my kids and my parents, and somebody other than me was sailing it for the first time, and may or may not have smashed into another boat. It definitely wasn't me. So, things like that, like you can kind of, fiberglass it and re-epoxy it and deal with some of the minor damage. My dad, for example, has a fiberglass boat, and usually for the 2-person boats. So you have your skipper and your crew, for the bigger boats wears a harness, so somewhat similar to as you would in rock climbing.
Okay.
But this one's got a hook in it, so there's a trapeze, because the flatter the boat, the faster the boat, right? So if your boat is flat, it's planing through the water perfectly. So you have your crewman, whose job is to basically maintain the front sail, the jib, and make sure that the boat is as flat as possible. So there's a few times where jumping in my dad's boat, I may or may not have caught the hook on the fiberglass, and all of a sudden there's a nice big gouge in the boat, right? That's so it's a lot of maintenance depending on what you're going through.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like I said, we do have boats that are up for rental. The nice thing is that with all of the members, most of them keep their boats there, and a lot of people are always looking for somebody else to sail with. So even if you're interested in learning, we can always set you up with an experienced person who can take you out, show you the ropes a little bit, awesome. And go for spins. So it's, I think like the classes for the week, for example, are under $200, right? So it's just a matter of, we know people that will come from Edmonton or surrounding areas, drop their kids off in the morning, kind of go do their own thing in Spruce or Stony, come back, pick them up at 4:00. And then there's different activities during that big sail week event throughout, so we'll do like communal dinners, breakfasts, after dinner events, right? We have barbecues and a big capture the flag, this huge area with kids and adults. It's fantastic. It's an exciting game. Yeah, we do like a mini Olympics, right? So you have different age groups for all the kids that are there, and then even the adults are getting into it. So it's nice because then I can do a 3-legged race against my dad and my mom with my wife, and people are trying to knock each other over. And yeah, so it's great. It's an awesome time. Usually third week of July is the perfect weather, right? It's 28 to 30 degrees. Sometimes we get wind, and that's where the whole, is it going to be a mirror out, or are we going to sail pretty hard today? Yeah. So it's a little bit hit or miss sometimes, but yeah, it's the perfect weather.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Ethan, thanks for coming on today. I'm definitely going to have to take you up on that offer and come out and sail one of these days.
You're going to love it. You'd have to come check it out. We'll get, I'm trying to get everyone out from the office in there.
Everybody from the office needs to go at least once.
It would be great. Yeah, they just have to come check it out. They can call me directly, or they can go to wadmansailingclub.com. There's a couple different things that they can, all the info is there. The cost of the memberships is there. A little bit of the history of the club is there. One of the cool things we just did was we put solar panels on the roof last year, so now we're fully solar powered, which is awesome. So we're just trying to keep up with the times, looking for people who are interested in learning about sailing.
Are you guys also on social media, Facebook or anything?
Facebook and Instagram, but I'm working on making that a little bit more active.
Awesome.
So,
well, thanks a bunch.
Awesome. Thanks, Gareth.